Dear sisters and brothers, we have some beautiful readings that fit with who we are, our mission, and we've been talking about this last week and before of being a family. So let me start. Maybe some of you remember the book that Monsignor Gerald Walsh wrote. He wrote it when I first was in seminary. It was actually a part in that book. This book was titled God Still Calls. We were at a time where we had very few seminarians and priests, and people thought, well, maybe God's not calling men to be priests anymore. And he said, no, God still calls. But a lot of the men were like Samuel, who weren't instructed, weren't familiar with God's voice, and they needed an Eli, a priest that could recognize and help them to understand the voice that's calling them and then how to respond. We see also matching with that John the Baptist, who pointed out who Jesus was for his disciples to then follow him. The role of parents and pastors is to help children know God, to recognize him, to know his voice, and to follow it. But if they're not taught how to recognize his voice or how to recognize him, it makes it really hard to follow. That's why it's so important that we see our role as this parish to be a school of prayer, to be people that know God, that know his voice, that help others to follow him, to meet him, to spend time with him. Brothers and sisters, that is the most important thing as a follower of the Lord. That is the most important thing as a Christian. It orders everything else. And so, my homily is short this weekend because I want you to listen to somebody that has heard that. This weekend we call Commitment Weekend for our financial stewardship of making a commitment to give financially to help us to be the family who's committed to hospitality, prayer, and worship. A family that is committed to come to know the Lord and to introduce others to him. Help them to do what Eli helped Samuel to do, to respond generously. And so I'm going to invite Kathy forward to share her experience in this parish and in her ministries of coming to know God.
Thank you, Father. Good afternoon. As Father said, my name is Kathleen Hendrum. I've been married to my husband John for nearly 46 years. We have 4 grown children and 5 grandchildren. John and I were both born and raised in Minot and grew up in St. Louis Parish. We attended St. Louis Grade School and graduated from Bishop Ryan High School, as did all 4 of our children. My first experience at St. John the Apostle Church was when we were a young family with 2 boys under the age of 2. We had just moved into a new home in St. John's Parish, and I remember coming to Mass that first Sunday. John was working, so I was alone with those 2 little ones. I decided to sit in the back of the church in case the baby got fussy. And sure enough, right before communion, the baby got fussy, and his older brother decided to act up. I was a bit overwhelmed, and the usher standing behind me could see that I needed help. He gently tapped me on the shoulder and offered to hold the baby so I could deal with my older child. Of course, that was over 40 years ago, and times have changed, but I gladly handed my baby to that stranger for a few minutes. To this day, I couldn't tell you who that usher was, but I can tell you exactly how it made me feel by his act of kindness. On my way home from Mass that day, I knew that this was the parish I wanted our family to be a part of, because I felt welcomed and encouraged by that man's act of kindness. It felt like we were part of the family. We joined St. John's the next day. Several years ago, circumstances required that we make the difficult decision to change parishes. But I'm happy to say that we've returned to St. John's, and we're so glad to be home. When Father asked me to speak today about how one of the ministries here at St. John's had affected me personally, I wasn't sure what I would talk about. But I learned years ago from my dad that when the pastor asks, you say yes. So here I am. As you probably know, a few years ago, Father began a program of Eucharistic Adoration here at St. John's. Prior to that time, I had always thought I was too busy to make the commitment to a specific hour every week. You might say I dabbled in adoration over the years because there were times when I would go and pray when I knew adoration was going on at another parish, but I never wanted to sign up, just in case. After attending the parish mission Father had to introduce adoration, I decided it was time to stop making excuses and to actually commit to spending time with Jesus in prayer. I became one of the initial adorers and proudly wear my adoration pin every day of the week as a reminder that Jesus is always waiting in the church or in the Mary Mother of God Chapel to listen to my needs and to share in my joys, or to just sit with me in silence. I remember having a conversation with Father about how adoration was like sitting on the couch with a friend and talking about what was going on in our lives. He compared it to St. John, sitting at the Last Supper with his head on the chest of Jesus. That image has stuck with me, and very often in my prayer time, that is what I contemplate. Me resting my head near the heart of Jesus, and him calming my fears and telling me he'll never leave me an orphan. At first, I couldn't imagine how I would fill an hour of time in the chapel. But I soon found that an hour wasn't enough time for me to tell Jesus what was going on in my life and to let him tell me how much he loved me and what he wanted for me in the next week. My time in adoration has become the best hour of the week. Last spring, when the pandemic caused us to be locked out of nearly everywhere, the church was still open, and Jesus was still here in the tabernacle, waiting for me and others to come to him. While official adoration hours had been canceled and we couldn't be in the small chapel, the main church was open, and for me it was a great comfort to be able to come to the church and pray. Jesus would dispel my fear and comfort me in the loneliness caused by not being able to be with family and friends. I can't say that I've experienced any great miracle in my life because of adoration, but I can say that I have received lots of little graces, and my relationship with Jesus is much deeper, far beyond anything I thought was possible. This last fall, when my family was facing a very difficult situation, one that a couple of years ago would have caused me to hide in my room, sick with worry, I found myself longing to be close to Jesus, with my head resting on his chest, and hearing him say he would be there for me and my family, no matter what the outcome of our situation was. We have all experienced a time when someone has asked us to pray for them or for someone they love. For me, Eucharistic Adoration is an excellent opportunity to take time to pray for the other members of my parish family, even when they haven't asked for me to pray for them. If you have never tried Eucharistic Adoration, I encourage you to consider it. or perhaps think about becoming involved in one of the other ministries offered here at St. John's. I think you will find, like I did, that they are all wonderful opportunities to grow in your faith and to get to know the other members of your parish community. Thank you for allowing me to share my Eucharistic Adoration experience with you today, and thank you for all the ways you support me and the other members of our parish family in our faith journeys.